quarterly reading wrap up. I am so excited. I've never done one of these before, but it is April and I want to reflect on all of the books I've read so far this year. So, in total, I have read 21, I believe, 21 books this year. I have had one DNF, and I am in the middle of a book at the moment. So I have finished 19 total books this year. I have had that one DNF, which we will talk about. But aside from those little stats, I do just want to dive right in. So we're going to start with my reads from January. Louie. No. You can hang out on the chair, but you can't jump up there. So we are going to start out with my reads from January. I started off this year with a bang. The first book that I read this year was Everlong by R. Reta. This book was emotionally devastating. This is one of those books that I feel like you should go into blind or knowing as little information as possible if you can about this book, because I feel like it's going to make the plot twists and what happens throughout the book so much more impactful and interesting. This book was emotionally devastating. It is, I believe this is considered YA. There's like not really any spice or anything like that, but it's a super emotional journey, and it is, I would say it's like romantasy adjacent. There are fantasy elements in here, and there is a love story, but it's definitely not a traditional romantasy by any means. So this was book one for this year. I rated this 5 stars. It ripped my heart out, but it was so worth it. And I thought this story was so beautiful. The next book that I read this year was Tourist Season by Brynne Weaver. Now, I read the Ruinous Love trilogy last year and I loved it, so I picked this up on release day, and it took me a minute to get to it, but this is one of those books that I'm really glad that I read it when I did, because this, oh my god, this had everything. Emotional impact, the like kind of crazy, unhinged things that Brynne Weaver writes. There are like several serial killers in this book. Like, truly so fascinating. A perfect blend of humor and plot and spice and relationships. This book is one of those books that genuinely has everything. It really does have like a little bit of everything. I absolutely loved this. This was another 5 star read for me. There is some unhinged stuff that happens in here, but part of what really got me with this book was that there is some great like Alzheimer's representation in here. Our FMC Harper is a caretaker for an elderly man who has Alzheimer's, and their relationship and watching how she navigates that is just like so beautiful. I cried like several times reading this book. I thought it was so fantastic, and I would highly recommend this one. This was another 5 star read for me. Next up, we have Tender Cruelty by Katee Robert. Again, another 5 star read. This is book 9 in her Dark Olympus series, which is like a Greek retelling, but in like a modern city. It's truly so fascinating. These books are so good. This is book 9 of an incomplete series. These follow standalone individual relationships, but the books do have an overarching plot, so you kind of do need to read them all in order, I would say, if you're going to fully grasp the story and get all those little Easter eggs and the plot leading up to the end. Book 10, the final book in the series, does come out this year. I am so freaking stoked about it. But this was so good. This was enemies to lovers like 8 books in the making. They get together in book 1 and they absolutely fucking hate each other. So when you finally get to their story, it had just built up over these 8 books, and I felt like it really made the enemies to lovers feel so good and so unique, and that you got to see these 8 books of them like absolutely despising each other. So this was another 5-star read. This again had fantastic spice. I love where the plot is going, and I cannot wait to see how this series ends. I finished out the month of January by starting my ACOTAR journey. So in January, I was able to read A Court of Thorns and Roses, book 1, A Court of Mist and Fury, book 2, and A Court of Wings and Ruin, book 3. I'm going to set this box down because it's heavy, but then we are going to dive in talking about these books. So my experience with ACOTAR was fantastic. I am somebody who's been a lifelong romantasy reader. I think I picked up my first romantasy book when I was like in elementary school. So I kind of put off ACOTAR when I really deeply got back into reading as an adult, just because I was so scared it wouldn't like measure up to my expectations. But it totally lived up to the hype. I absolutely love this series now, and I thought it was fantastic. So, book 1, we follow the beginning of Feyre's journey with her and Tamlin. I personally rated book 1 4 stars. I thought it was good. I really enjoyed it. It did feel a little bit like exposition for the rest of a series. I think part of spoilers for ACOTAR here, but I think part of the reason it felt that way to me is that I went into it knowing the spoiler that Feyre does not end up with Tamlin, and I went into it knowing that people end up disliking Tamlin. So for me, there was a bit of a feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop because I went into it knowing that Feyre ends up with Rhysand, so I was kind of waiting for them to break up, essentially, rather than treating it like its own fully fledged love story. But that being said, I still really enjoyed it. I loved book 1, solid 4-star read. Then we get into book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury. A Court of Mist and Fury blew me away. I loved the character development we saw. I loved the way the plot developed. The end of that book is absolutely fucking batshit crazy, so insane. I loved A Court of Mist and Fury. That was a solid, solid 5-star read, maybe even 6-star read. I really, really enjoyed it. And book 2 really solidified for me that this is going to be a series that sticks with me forever. Then we read A Court of Wings and Ruin, and oh my god. I have a reading vlog up on my YouTube channel for every single one of these books. I did vlog my entire experience reading ACOTAR for the first time, and in my A Court of Wings and Ruin vlog, you will see me crying, sobbing, like literally sobbing like a baby, like throwing a tantrum, cannot breathe. The things that that book did to me, oh my god. The ending, A Court of Wings and Ruin, infinity star read for me. I fucking loved that book. I thought it was so fantastic, and it was just truly, I was blown away by that book. That was A Court of Mist and Fury really solidified for me how good this series was, but A Court of Wings and Ruin was for me what put it into my god tier series. So those were all the books that I read in January. Now we are going to move on to the February reads. So the first book that I read in February was A Court of Frost and Starlight. This was a solid 5-star read for me. I felt like this was the perfect book to follow up A Court of Wings and Ruin because Feyre and Rhysand's main plot line is kind of wrapped up in this nice little bow, but there are still some unanswered questions. And I feel like in this book, we got a solid, like, respite, reprieve, a little rest, if you will, from all of the craziness that happens in A Court of Wings and Ruin. But at the same time, this didn't feel boring. It felt like we got to see a lot of the family, like, bonding and enjoying each other. I love that this was kind of, centered around the solstice time, so it's their, like, winter holiday. I feel like this is a book that I'll end up reading or rereading every winter around Christmas, just because it felt so, like, cozy and beautiful. And I feel like by this point, I feel like at this point in the series, you feel like you're a member of the family. So getting to read about them at the holidays, like, genuinely getting to rest and enjoy each other and just be in each other's presence without all of these crazy, crazy, like, world ending threats hanging over their heads. This felt like the perfect little novella to kind of give us a little break in between this, or excuse me, in between A Court of Wings and Ruin and A Court of Silver Flames. So this was a solid 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed it. And now we're going to get into my thoughts on A Court of Silver Flames. A Court of Silver Flames fucked me all the way up. That was another 6-star Infinity Star read. Nesta's character journey is one of the best, most fascinating character journeys I think I have ever read about. I personally am somebody who started out Nesta's book not really liking her. I felt like she was a bitch, and I felt like it was super shitty how she allowed her trauma to make her mean. Like, I totally understand that that is, like, a trauma response, and that is something that happens to people, but I felt like it pissed me off. And especially since she is, like, the eldest sister, like, the oldest daughter, her not, like, taking care of Feyre really bothered me as, like, the oldest sibling and the eldest daughter in my family. So I had a lot of personal beef with Nesta when I went into this book. However, I loved her character development, and by the end of the book, I loved her, and I could see so much of my younger self, especially in her. And I really, really feel like her character development, that story was so character driven, even though there is obviously a lot of plot happening and it is still moving the entire series as a whole forward. Her character development was so freaking phenomenal. I cannot say enough good things about that book. I cried almost as hard as I had cried in A Court of Wings and Ruin when I was reading A Court of Silver Flames. I thought it was so well done, so beautiful. I love Cassian. Seeing him and Nesta together was just so beautiful. I could go on and on about that book because I absolutely loved it. So, continuing on through the month of February, after I finished my ACOTAR journey, I immediately dove into a TBR that I had curated for Romanticycon. There were a bunch of authors at Romanticycon that I was so excited to meet, and a ton of their books that I wanted to get through before going to that event. So, the first book that I made it through off that TBR was Heir of Illusion by Madeline Taylor. I really enjoyed this. This is a romantasy about a wraith and a reaper. There are some more formulaic romantasy elements in this book. However, there are also some really unique elements. I felt like with this book, there were some predictable plot twists, and those predictable plot twists made the unpredictable plot twists even crazier. So I really enjoyed this. Throughout this whole book, I was like, this is a solid 4-star read. Then once you get to the end, the last like 50 to 100 pages, I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. Is this a 5-star read? Like, do these plot twists bump it up? At the time, I think I did end up rating it 5 stars. Looking back, I feel like it was probably closer to a 4.5 for me. But that being said, I really, really did enjoy it. I thought this book was fantastic. There is some spice in here. The plot is really fast paced. Things are constantly happening. This is a book that you are not going. My cat is stuck in a bag. I need to go help him. All right, he's been freed. But what was I even saying? This book was really interesting. It was really fast paced, so things were constantly happening. One thing about this book, you're not going to be bored when you pick this up because the plot is constantly moving along and there are all these twists and turns that do keep it really, really interesting. There's also some fantastic spice in here, and I really do enjoy the lore and world building, and I feel like we're going to get more of that in the second book. So, I really liked this one and I would recommend this. The next book that I read was Something Wicked by Fallon Ballard. This book was so unique. I ate this up. It's a short, like 300 ish page book, maybe a little over 300 pages, but oh my god, this was so fun. This follows a courtesan, Kate, who has magic, and in the country of Avon, where they live, people who have magic are considered gifted and they are discriminated against, they are looked down upon. It was just a really interesting world building and like magic system, and I thought that that was really, really cool and really unique. I also loved how positive the representation was of her being a courtesan. I thought that was really interesting. That's like kind of one of my special interests, like courtesans in history. So getting to read about that in a romanticy setting just felt so cool to me, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then we follow Callum, who he is kind of like a royal nepo baby, I guess, like prince. Yeah, he's a prince. He's a prince, and at the time that this novel starts, there's a revolution happening, and the people in power, the royal families, are like displaced. They are disposed. They are not in power anymore. So it follows their journey. And honestly, I really love it. It's kind of like a enemies to lovers light, I would say, because he really does not trust gifted people because his mother died due to like mistreatment from a gifted person. So I just thought this book was so good. I thought it was really, really interesting. And this was a solid, fun, spicy 5-star read for me. And then next up, one of my favorite books of February, we have Warrior Princess Assassin by Brigid Kemmerer. This was fucking fantastic. This had everything I want in a romantasy. We have tension. This was one of the sexiest books I've read all year, and the spice doesn't even happen until like the very end. The tension and the yearning in this book, if you want tension, if you want yearning, I'm gonna keep saying it. This is the fucking book for you. This book was so, so good. We follow a warrior king who is really feared for his fire magic. We follow a princess who is betrothed to said warrior king and really does not want to be. And then we follow an assassin who is the princess's like lifelong best friend. Louis! We follow an assassin who is the princess's like lifelong best friend, and we see how their relationships grow and develop and intertwine throughout this book. This is an MMF book. If that is something you do not like, I feel like you should try this anyway because it's really, really good. But that is my personal favorite relationship dynamic to read about in books, and the way that it was done in here was so, so good. Maybe, maybe you are doing things that are illegal. But yeah, the way this was done was phenomenal. I cannot say enough how much I loved this. This was a 6-star Infinity Star read for me. And this and A Court of Silver Flames are tied for my favorite book of the month from February. This was so, so good, and I would highly, highly recommend it. So, the final book that I started in February was Direbound by Sable Sorensen. I absolutely loved this book. This was so fun. I feel like I had seen people saying it was a copy paste of the Empyrean series of Fourth Wing, and I love Fourth Wing. So I picked this up being like, I don't care if it's a copy paste, Fourth Wing with Direwolves. I will eat that shit up because I love the Empyrean series. This is not a copy paste of Fourth Wing at all. I feel like the character dynamics are so, so different. And even though there are a couple of like plot similarities, I feel like they are completely different books and completely different series. They both just happen to be romanticises with enemies to lovers, bonding with large magical creatures. So they feel kind of different to me. This was fast paced, it was fun, it was unique, it was different. We have games and trials in here. We have a giant sassy wolf who is terrifying and amazing, and I loved Marin in here. I really liked her character. I There's a plot twist in here that's fucking diabolical. Diabolical plot twist, but I won't say anything to spoil it. But oh my god, this book was so good. This was so fun. This was a solid 5-star romantasy for me. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I'm so excited for book 2. This one I did start in February and I finished in March. So now we are going to get into my March reads. Oh, diving into my March reads. I finished Direbound at the beginning of March and really loved it. However, I had read so many romanticises back to back to back in a row at that point that I decided to take a little break from romantasy and switch it up and do something a little different. Romantasy is the primary genre that I prefer to read from. However, I will read fantasy. I love like dark academia. I love dark romance. Occasionally we'll sprinkle in like magical realism, fiction, and the occasional contemporary romance as well. So I switched it up with one of my favorite authors, and I read Girl Dinner by Olivia Blake. This book was insane. This was like another solid 6-star read. This follows primarily two female main characters as they navigate their very different lives that somehow overlap through this prestigious sorority house. This book was so good. This book was batshit crazy. This book was unhinged. It was satirical. It was funny. It was fun. I felt like despite it being satirical, there are a lot of good points in here about what it's like to be a woman and what it's like to be a mother. And there is this underlying theme of how far would you go for perfection? How far would you go for your children? How far would you go for your life to be better and to achieve your dreams? There is also like an underlying plot line about like social media and like trad wives. This book is so good. I laughed. I Did this book make me cry? I don't know. I'm not sure if this book made me cry or not, but I loved this book. I was friggin' cackling out loud at some points. I thought this was so, so fantastic, and I really, really enjoyed it. Cannot recommend this one enough. Like, truly cannot recommend this enough. This was so, so good. So, after reading Girl Dinner, I dove into another kind of more different book. This one does have fantasy elements, but it's definitely not like a traditional, it's not a romantasy by any means. and that was Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. This book was also so good. I really enjoyed this one. I will say I'm glad I read this when I did, because when I initially picked it up, I feel like people were talking about it as if it was a romantasy, which in its structure and its plot and the relationships, I don't consider this a romantasy. There is like a romantic subplot, but this is not going to be a true romantasy by any sense of the word. And I'm really glad that I kind of, through a couple reviews, figured that out before reading it, because I feel like if I had read it expecting it to be like a traditional romantasy, I may have been a little bit disappointed. That being said, I went into it knowing that it was a little bit more academic. I had seen people saying that they felt like it was too complicated and like it was too pretentious. Personally, I did not get either of those things from it. I felt like because this centered around magic and like magic as science, like they're magicians, they're studying magic, but through the lens of these like philosophers and like scientists, I felt like you could understand what was happening in here even if you didn't understand every single individual like academic reference, just because it's through the lens of magic. It's not necessarily something that I feel like you have to fully grasp every single little detail. Like, do I really understand like hyperbolic space versus like Euclidean? Like, no, I don't. But I don't necessarily know that you need to understand that to fully read this and enjoy it. There were a lot of things that I had to look up in here. There were a lot of vocab words that I learned by reading this book, but personally, I enjoy stuff like that. I like doing things like that from time to time, reading a book that's a little bit more challenging, where I feel like I'm really having to like sink my teeth in it and like do some learning by reading rather than just like I already know every word and it's like super easy, giggle, kick your feet fun. I really, really did enjoy this. I will say there are some dark fucking topics in this book, and I feel like you need to go into it prepared for the darker topics that are in this book. This is this is a heavy book. That is a good way to describe it. It's a heavy book emotionally. It deals with like suicidal ideation, it deals with like the struggles of academia. I personally really, really enjoyed this. I would say this was a solid 4.5 to 5-star read. I'm not really sure exactly where I would rate it. I feel like I almost want to say that it was a 5-star read because I felt every emotion. Like there's a little bit of comic relief. There's several points in this book that made me cry. There are points in this book that are relatable. There are points in this book that are devastating. There are points where you're just like, holy shit. I really, really did enjoy this, and I feel like I would recommend this if you know what you're getting into with this book. You're not expecting this to be like a Dyer Bound or like an ACOTAR type of book. It's not that. But I think if you go into this with the right expectations, you can really enjoy it and take something away from it. So I would definitely recommend this one. And after saying all that out loud, I do think I would consider this one to be a 5-star read. Then I dove back into standard romantasy, and I read my first book by the Twisted Sisters, and that is Hollow. This is by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. This was my first book that I'd read from them. I had really high expectations for this because I know everybody loves Zodiac Academy, everybody loves their writing, and at least a lot of people do. Not everybody. I'm not totally trying to generalize, but I loved this. I ate this up. A man who's actually morally gray. I loved him. Hendrix is our MMC. He is like truly a morally gray man. I figured out who he was. I felt like fairly early on in this book, and I feel like they kind of make it so that you can figure out who he is earlier on. but that just makes like it's one of those things where you know a secret that nobody else does as the reader, and it just made this book so entertaining and so fun. I loved the lore in this. The lore was really unique. It's basically like one giant game and trial competition where they have to capture these forest spirits because the forest is like encroaching on their lands and making it so that people are having to flee their homes and or pass away, and eventually all of the continent is going to be eaten by this forest and there will be no land and no people left. So Ferris Creed is our FMC. She is a human. I really loved Ferris too. I loved that she was like so spirited and she really like believed in herself and she was really strong in like her own way. I really, really loved this book. There was some fantastic spice in here. This was another book that was really fast paced from the beginning. Things are happening and the plot is like moving along, which I really enjoyed. This does end on like kind of a diabolical cliffhanger, but I feel like it's okay. I was okay with it because I truly enjoyed this so much. This was a solid 5-star read for me. Really, really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to read more of the Twisted Sisters work now. Then we get to my favorite books of March. Some of my favorite books I read the whole year. These are controversial. Blood of Hercules by Jasmine Moss and Bonds of Hercules by Jasmine Moss. I fucking loved these. I loved these so much. I thought that these were amazing. This follows Alexis Hurt. She is a girl who has been through hell, essentially. She has grown up in the foster system. She was abused, mistreated. Her story is really sad. There were several points in these books where I was like crying. And the beginning of this book is fucking hard to read because you're reading her as a child enduring this abuse. It's very, very. First couple chapters of this are tough to get through, like emotionally, very tough. But these books are so good. They are spicy. They are fun. They have emotional depth. They have games and trials. They have a fascinating like magic system and world building system. The Spartan society is like so fucking interesting. How they're they're immortal, but they only become immortal after the age of 20, I believe, and then before that they're subjected to all these crazy trials and like bloodshed, and there's so much violence in this culture, but it is so interesting. There is not really much spice in book 1. Book 2 is where we get some of the heavy hitting spice, but things happening in these books that are fucking unhinged. Unhinged. Like, oh my god, I cannot say enough how much I loved these, because these were again books that I felt like had everything. These are also MMF books, baby. I went into these thinking that they were a why choose, in which she ends up with every single MMC, because there's 4 MMCs in this book. Minor spoiler, it is just MMF. She does not end up with all 4 of the men. But my cat's eating plastic. Hold on. I absolutely loved all 4 of the MMCs in this book, and the 2 that she ends up with are like, oh my god, some of the best male characters that I've read, that I really, really loved in a long, long time. I felt like they had layers and depth, and like also are truly morally gray, which this was like the month of the morally gray man. Like, oh my lord, I had so much fun with these books. I was literally giggling, kicking my feet, like squealing out loud at some points from how entertained I was by these. I thought they were so good. I also love Alexis. I love that she is like smart. I love that she still like throughout her training process, she like hates it and is like complaining about like training and running. I thought that was so just different and like funny. Also, I think she's really, really funny. I feel like, and I don't know if this is like how, I think this was how she was meant to be written. To me, she read as like super autistic coded because she doesn't understand a lot of social cues and gets like really confused about certain shit, like socially, but she's like insanely, like insanely smart. Like she is legitimately a genius. She's so smart. And I just felt like her not understanding social cues was like so relatable to me as a person. Like she would not understand something and be like, same queen, me too. But yeah, I really, really loved these. These were so good. These were so fun. I also think that part of Alexis and her personality, she has a really unique like voice and a really unique narration. And I really, really loved that. I personally felt like that was part of what made these books so special. We also have like interesting mythical creatures. We have like some insane, deadly animal sidekicks. These books really do have everything. I really cannot state enough how much I love these. These were like Infinity Star vibes reads for me. Like truly some of my favorite books I've ever read. Infinity Star vibes reads. So, if you take anything away from this video, it would be give Jasmine Moss a chance, read Blood of Hercules, and see if you like it. So, yeah, that is my thoughts on these. So now, end of March, we are getting into my first and only DNF of this year. This is a book that is also controversial. I've seen people either really love this or really hate this, and that is Amid Clouds and Bones. So I made it, I still have my bookmark in here. I made it 96 pages into this book. This book, this book was fine. I I am somebody who sometimes really struggles with DNFing because I want to know how a story ends. And even though I DNF'd this, I feel like there's a chance that I'll go back and finish it just to see. But throughout the 96 pages, I felt like nothing really happened. The plot felt really, really slow and like nothing was actually happening. And I felt like the only personality traits that both our FMC and MMC had is that they were hot and like dislike each other, which I feel like if this were like a short little novella, I feel like that would make sense. Like if this 96 page section had been condensed down into like 30 pages and then we got on with whatever else happens in the rest of the story, I feel like I would have been tempted to keep going. But I don't know. I just felt like nothing was happening. Like it wasn't like there was anything egregiously wrong with this book. It wasn't like I went into it and was like, "Oh god." You know? Like I was more or less entertained. There was a spicy scene in here that I particularly liked, but as I kept going on, I just felt like we're 100 pages in and nothing has happened, and our main characters don't really seem to have any defining traits other than nice job, Peach. Our characters don't really seem to have any defining traits other than disliking each other. And to me, I just felt like this year there are so many books on my TBR that I want to get to. There are so many new releases coming out. There are so many things that I'm dying to read. And I felt like I was missing out by choosing to spend my time on this rather than something else. So I did DNF this one. I don't know if this is going to be a DNF for good or a DNF for now. I feel like there's a chance that maybe one day when I'm feeling something like a little slower paced, I might dive back in right where I left off rather than rereading that first 100 pages because I don't feel like I need to. I don't feel like there was any like crucial information in there that I would need to reread in order to continue. So who knows? Maybe I'll dive back into this one day and really enjoy it. I'm not sure. But yeah, this was the one DNF that I did have this year so far. So technically, that should be the end of my quarterly wrap up because Amid Clouds and Bones was what I finished out March with. However, the two most recent books that I read and the book that I'm reading now, those three books, I feel like are so important and I really want to talk about them. So we're going to try to talk about those super, super quickly. Part of the reason why I DNF'd Amid Clouds and Bones when I did is because on March 31st, Game On by Navessa Allen was released. I had highly anticipated this one. I loved Lights Out. Lights Out's actually what introduced me to like the online book talk and booktube community. So Lights Out has a really special place in my heart. I love that book. I thought it was so funny, so good. Loved Caught Up. So I was highly anticipating Game On. And oh my god, this book did not disappoint. 5-star read, spicy, dark, funny, sexy, so good. There was chronic illness rep in here that I thought was absolutely fantastic. As a chronic illness girly myself, really related to the main character Stella. I love Tyler. I love that he was like emotionally complex. I love that we had seen him in the previous two books and he seemed like he was going to be an irredeemable asshole, and then Navessa somehow redeemed him in here. This book was so good. I finished this in less than 48 hours, was like literally giggling and kicking my feet the entire time. I would highly recommend this one, and I feel like this is so different from the first two books as well that I feel like even if you didn't like Lights Out and or Game On, you might still really like this one. I would highly recommend picking this up. This was so good and I really loved it. So then I had my first reread of 2026. I reread Shield of Sparrows. I just finished my reread last night, so the dust jacket is not on the book right now, but I loved this just as much the second time around as I did the first time. I read this last year, like probably a couple months after it came out, and it was like infinity star read for me. I believe I had this ranked as the number 5, like the 5th best book that I read last year. I do have a video ranking those books up on my channel if you want to see it, but oh my god, this I was worried it might not hit quite as hard the second time around because there are so many plot twists in here that once you know, like you know what I mean? But it was so fun going back through and like adding additional annotation tabs to like all the different foreshadowing and putting the pieces together earlier on and like making connections that I maybe didn't make the first time around. So this again, Infinity Star read, just as fun on the reread. The last like 20 to 30 pages of this are fucking batshit. Like batshit crazy. So good. Cannot recommend this one enough. I absolutely love Shield of Sparrows. And I feel like this is just so fantastic. This is definitely, the Shield of Sparrows series is definitely in the running for one of my top favorite fantasy series of all time. This was so good. So at the moment, we all should know what this is. I am reading Rites of the Starling. I started this last night after finishing my Shield of Sparrows reread. Have the gorgeous, look at them together. I'm losing it. But I am so obsessed with this already. We're being introduced to new characters, new worlds, things are happening. No spoilers, so I won't say much more than that, but I'm like 60 pages into this right now. As soon as I'm done filming, I'm going to go sit and binge this for the rest of the day because this so far has been so good. and I feel like it's really holding up as the sequel to Shield of Sparrows. So I am super, super stoked about this. I would highly recommend this series if you have not started it already. So that's going to be everything for my quarterly reading wrap up. I feel like that was crazy. I have been talking for like 40 minutes. Will anyone watch this video? Does anybody care about this? I don't know, but I care. I thought this was fun. So, thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you did make it to the end. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Try my best to upload to YouTube long form every single Monday with short form content just sporadically as I have time to upload it. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments what you would like to see from me. If you like more long form videos like this, if you like reading vlogs, if you want like TBR videos, just good old fashioned book recs, and reviews. Let me know what you want to see from me because I really do love the YouTube space and it is one of my big goals in 2026 to grow and, create a little community on here. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that I will see you in my next one. Bye.